Cups. Hi, everybody, and welcome to another version of our awesome authors. I am B. Lee Coyne, your host, longtime journalist from the East Coast originally, and we have with us our special guest today, and I will pronounce her name right this time around, Candy Rizzardini, originally from San Diego, California. Well, that area anyway, growing up there. And our special helper today is none other than Kanta Luthra, who actually inaugurated this series a few weeks ago with her own writings and stuff. Candy.
Yes.
You grew up in California. Tell us about those early days of yesteryear. What was it like there for you? San Diego, that climate.
Beautiful. It's really beautiful climate. I don't have to talk loud, do I?
No, you're fine.
Who am I supposed to look at you?
Look at the camera, whoever. Hi, camera.
Well, I'm visually impaired, so I can't really see where the camera is. But,
okay.
I'll just look at you, I guess.
Okay,
San Diego.
Yes.
Yeah, it's my first memories, even though I was born in Ridgecrest, which is a small town in the Mojave Desert, which is east of L.A., I think.
So it's a little hotter than it is here.
Yeah, definitely.
You didn't meet the devil in the desert, did you?
No.
Wasn't quite that hot. Well, this is very interesting because Candy's presentation later will be having to do with some theological and religious connotations of the Disney days. She's a specialist in Disney movies. But let's go a little bit about your background first, Candy. You grew up in California. You went to high school there, or where?
Yeah, well, I went to a school for the blind in Oklahoma.
Tell us a little bit about it. Once upon a time.
Well, it was Muskogee. If you know the song, I'm proud to be an Okie from Muskogee. That's Muskogee.
Gotcha.
And then my mom and sister and I moved back to San Diego, and I went to high school, junior high and high school there. And then I went to an arts college called Cal Arts, or the California Institute of the Arts.
Where's that?
That's in Valencia. It's in LA County. And my big ambition in life was to be a Disney animator.
Wow.
Yeah. So I've always been able to draw. And then my vision got worse. And so I decided that I was going to have to do something creative, but something I could do, and that's writing. So.
Terrific. Okay. So how did you first get hooked on Walt Disney, of all people? What drew you
Of all people.
Yeah, what drew you to Disneyland and the Disney realm, the Disney domain?
Oh, I've always been a Disney fan.
What was your first exposure to Disney, the first film that you took in?
Probably The Aristocats. That came out in 1970, so that tells you how old I am, I guess. But I mostly, back then, of course, in the 70s, we didn't have the cable and all the Disney films on DVD. So mostly what I got from Disney was the books and the records, the old LPs. And, but yeah, when a Disney movie did come out, which was every 7 or 8 years then, it was a big deal. So I could say my favorite Disney movies are Pinocchio and Bambi. They're just
Why Pinocchio
best.
and Bambi? Tell us a little bit what
Pinocchio,
images they conveyed to you.
Well,
Candy.
Pinocchio is considered like the most beautifully, technically animated, and the story is very powerful and emotional. And
I love it too.
Yeah, and Bambi, of course, has the
Very poignant.
environmentalist message, which I agree with.
Yeah, right.
Now, somebody told me that Pinocchio is really a satire on today's politics, and that every time a person running for office lies, his or her nose gets bigger. Do you know, is there any validity to that
Well,
imagery?
the original,
teasing.
the guy that originally wrote Pinocchio, Carlo Collodi, the original story is full of satire on society.
Yes.
But I think that whole thing about your nose growing, I think that comes from an Italian figure of speech.
Mamma mia. Woo-hoo.
Like, this lie is so obvious, it's, like they say, plain as a nose on your face.
Wow.
So that comes from more of the Italian
Now, you have Italian ancestry in your background, don't you? With the name
Rizzardini, yeah.
What part of Italy did your ancestors come from?
I think it was northern Italy. Trying to remember the
That's close
the
to
town.
the Alps.
Yeah, because obviously I'm very
Alpine.
pale. So
You have color in your own right.
yeah, a little bit.
Doesn't she look beautiful?
You'll embarrass her. You'll make her red on camera.
Yeah.
Hi there, camera.
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't look.
So tell us, when you first began to watch these Disney films, were you interested in analyzing them? Were you just enjoying them for entertainment? What's the scoop?
Oh yeah, entertainment. Yeah, just maybe the fantasy of it was sort of an escapism, which I have always sort of been drawn to.
A lot of people do that.
Oh yeah, and but also being an artist, and of course my drawing style was very similar to the Disney style. Okay. So I went to, Cal Arts for 3 years. I didn't finish like a lot of Cal Arts students. And then I got an internship at the Disney studio.
Really? Wow.
For a short time. But my vision started to get worse after that, so I kind of drifted for a couple of years. And
what did you do at the Disney studio? What was your role there?
I was like an apprentice animator, and we had to do what's called cleanups and in-betweens, which is the drawings that go between the key poses. And also cleanup is what you see on the screen will be the finished product. It's a very clean line, thin, clean line that takes actually years to perfect. And
it's like a writer's first draft and then revision and all that stuff, visually.
Well, cleanup is you're cleaning up someone else's rough drawing, so it's very meticulous, and I just couldn't do it with my vision, actually. But I didn't know that when I started out in that business, because it's very exciting not only to draw but to see your drawings come to life.
Are there any big myths we can use to explode now that sighted people have about low vision or blind people that we could mention?
Well, I'd say a lot of sighted people maybe think that blind people are also stupid or have other disabilities as well, like being deaf. I mean, they don't know. So
it's sort of a negative bundling.
Well, yeah, it's always kind of going to be negative, because I think maybe people think of themselves, how would I survive? How would I deal with being blind if it was me? And so most people are pretty helpful, I found, as a blind adult. I'd go ahead and say that I'm blind, but as a kid.
I just mentioned this as a sidelight. Many years ago when I was in social work training, they used the idea of a plate being like a clock, and that the food was, let's say the steak was at 12 o'clock, the peas were at 3 or 4, and the mashed potatoes at 6 or 7.
Yeah, we still do that.
We still do that. Yeah. And what happened was, a few years ago, I was attending a special event at the Armory. I think it was a tuba concert or something like that. And somehow, I lost my first cell phone in the seats there. It somehow slipped out of a pocket or something. I don't know how. But I went home. The cell phone was not there anymore. And I was trying to figure out how to get it. Well, the place was closed for a few weeks, but then they reopened, and I called up the Armory and I said, if I was sitting on the stage, my seating and the possible loss of the cell phone would have been approximately at between 10 and 11 o'clock on a plate. And I used that kind of analogy, and they found my phone. So it was a funny way to kind of do treasure hunting, but I'm glad it worked.
Yeah, it can be useful for a lot of things.
Okay. At this point, I'm going to ask how you got to write this article called Transition. What's the name of the magazine?
Let's see. It's I think it's called Life Skills.
Life Skills. And
if you could look at the.
Yeah. Where is it published?
It's a dialogue. A
Dialogue.
world of ideas for visually impaired people of all ages.
It's published here in Salem.
In Salem, great.
Yes,
Okay.
summer 2011.
Okay. So let's have Kanta read some excerpts from what you wrote. on this. What's the name of this? Transitions.
Yeah,
Go, count to
of
go.
struggle and
do look
acceptance.
do look at the camera there,
Well,
as well as the page, because
yeah.
the people want to
Okay.
see you out there.
And I do have an accent, and I guess.
Well, that's fine.
Okay. As a child, I didn't use the term blind to describe myself, though I was born legally blind. I subconsciously emphasized what vision I had by referring to myself as partially sighted. Like everyone who has full sight or some sight, I relied on my vision more than my other senses. I grew up accepting that I needed to use some low vision aids, but as I got older and experienced more vision loss, I struggled against using what I would call more serious low vision aids, such as the cane, braille, and a screen reader with the computer. I realize now that my resistance to these things was directly related to my struggle with accepting my loss of vision.
The camera's looking for you.
Oh,
So-
okay.
Tell them that
Okay.
you're still here. Go ahead.
I'm there. I'm not the type of person to stick a smiley face on something I regard as inherently bad. I have met people who seem to have a good attitude about their blindness, but I'm not one of those people. Some blind people try to make lemonade out of the lemons life has given them. But my reaction is to get bad and throw a smash the lemons. I like that. I am one of them too. I'm at the point in my life where I can admit that some of my problems accepting certain vision aids only hurt myself and held me back from achieving the things I could. My first memories of school were of learning to read the Dick and Jane books in large print. Throughout my elementary school years, my primary low vision aids were books in large print and writing paper with thick, dark lines. When I attended public junior high schools in California, some of my teachers tried to make, I think this is 13, I have to go to 14.
16 is the next page, right there.
No, that's not the next.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah,
you
it's
can-
kind of stuck together.
Uh-huh.
Sorry about that. Me use the white cane, but I always resisted, claiming that I didn't need the cane because I could see well enough to get around. I still believe I was right. At
Should
the
we stop there?
Can I finish one?
Oh,
do
sure,
have
go
one
ahead.
more
Sure, go ahead.
sentence here. At the time, I had pretty good vision and didn't see the need for a cane.
Very good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So would you like to comment a little bit about that, Candy?
Yeah, first of all,
As it looks to you now.
yeah. Well, I should say, first of all, that I don't know if I explained that. Where's the camera?
That way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't
Straight.
know what that way means.
Okay.
Straight.
Yes.
The reason why my friend Kanta here is reading is that even though I can write, I can't read my own writing, which is ironic and sad. But that's how it is. So I use a screen reader on my computer, which took me a really long time to learn, which is called Window Eyes. There's another one called JAWS that's more popular on the West Coast. But I learned Window Eyes, and so that's the one I'm staying with.
Go on.
Yeah, I didn't use a cane until I was about 30 years old. I went through a training program when I was living in Indiana. It's another place I lived.
You're mid-30s now?
I'm a little older.
Okay. Nobody out there, this is a
You
military
don't
secret.
ever
Don't
ask a
tell
woman's
anybody.
age.
Yeah, you don't ask.
Okay.
But I guess the point is I didn't accept the cane. I didn't think I needed it until later in life. And I did finally come to accept it. And I use it all the time.
So what inspired you to write that? Was there a given reflection moment in time that says, aha, I got to put this in print?
Yeah. because I think a lot of blind people could relate to it. Even if they were, like in my case, I was born with legally blind, and then over the years my vision got worse. So even though I was used to asking for help and getting certain low vision aids, I wasn't. It was still hard to accept the vision loss when it came. So I do understand that.
For many of us, it's easier for us to nurture and to feel better to give than to receive. You know, there's just more nobility, I guess, in being a giving person. Would you say that's true for you?
To give?
Yes, that's easier to accept being the giver than the taker?
No, actually,
not
just
for
the
you.
opposite.
You like to take more than give?
Well, no, as when you grow up visually impaired, you end up having to accept help a lot.
Taking, yeah.
So it's actually harder to give and to think in terms of giving rather than taking.
Interesting.
Because when you're a kid, when you're a little kid and you're visually impaired or blind, people do things for you so much that you just come to accept it.
Yeah. By the way,
could I interject?
Yes, go ahead.
Well, that's not true about her. What I learned, because she is also a giver. The other day, she had this beautiful, beautiful necklace with all the icons, religious icons, and she wanted to give it to me. And I decided, no, I can't accept that, because it could have been like $15, $20 worth of or more. So I took, since she insisted, I took one of the icons of Buddha. Or Buddha, or one of the, I don't know, maybe Ganesha or somebody.
I think it might have been Ganesha.
Yeah, so it's not true that she's not giving. She's very generous.
Well, thank you.
You blew her cover. Okay.
Yeah,
I want to
thank you.
turn now to a little bit about Disney, because that's one of our focal points. Tell us about you. Candy explored Disney in terms of his religious upbringing, his childhood, and what impact it had on the movie characters he created in his films. Tell us a little bit about how you began to explore that and what your research has brought forth.
I should say that this article that Kanta was reading a little bit, I had that published. But this book I'm working on is not done yet, and hopefully it'll be done sometime in my lifetime.
Does it have a name?
Yeah, well, right now I just call it Disney Religion, because it's about Disney's religious, Walt Disney himself, his religious beliefs, and the religious aspects, elements in the classic Disney films.
I have a crazy name, Disney : Faith and Fables. Just play with it.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's probably too far-fetched, but okay. Yeah, so tell us more about what you learned about how Disney's childhood religious training and later on, and how they crept into his film's fabric. Really.
Yeah, well, I think from what I've studied that Walt was influenced a lot by his father, and his father was a deacon in the Congregational Church at the turn of the century, like early 1900s. And now when I say turn of the century, I have to think which one, you know? So, I mean, it's 1900s. Yeah. So his early films especially reflected his Christian upbringing, but not
example?
Like Pinocchio is probably the most religious Disney film of the classic films, which is, it's like religious without being real obvious, but it has a lot of symbolism, you know, like the blue fairy is sort of depicted as an angel with the glowing light around her, and when she appears, she's there to function as sort of an angel, as getting Pinocchio out of trouble, bringing him to life at the very beginning. And Jiminy Cricket being sort of
conscience.
Yeah, the idea of conscience, of course, is a religious concept, I think, and especially like mentioned in the New Testament. So I think that, you know, Disney got, you know, a lot of his ideas from sort of the Christian consensus of his time.
Are there any one or two Disney characters who you kind of disagree with, or think that he may have gone overboard in the way he depicted them?
No, not You mean the classic Disney films?
And any of them?
Well, I
He
know.
had different periods in his filmmaking career. Did he end up the same way he started out?
No,
Or what were some of the transitions he had?
Well, I think in the beginning, a lot of the early animated classics have more of Walt Disney's own personal influence, his own values and beliefs, I think. And then later, as time went on, you know, like the 50s, 60s, you see maybe more, you know, like less of Walt's direct influence because he was so busy with all the other projects, Disneyland and Epcot, which never really was, you know, realized the way he envisioned it as a real experimental city. And of course, CalArts, which is the college I went to.
Yes.
Walt planned that in the 60s before he died.
Yes. I remember, Candy, you mentioned we all belong to a group that meets Thursdays in the library's plaza room, a writers' support group, as it were. And I think you mentioned The Parent Trap as being an example of how he promoted the idea of family cohesion and essentially opposed separation and divorce as something that was a no-no. Could you go into that a little bit and what you recall, the way it was thematically played out?
Yeah, well, Parent Trap came out, I should say the original, because they've made a couple of remakes since.
The early one.
Yeah, 1961, I think, was based on a German story that Walt read, or one of his, one of his directors. And I think David Swift was one of his directors at the time. And it was done, I think, as a statement of Walt against divorce, because he saw that this was the coming trend, and he felt that it was going to be a bad thing in the future. Disney had a way of sort of predicting what might happen in society. And it actually, in some cases, it came true. And I think that was due to he had a very intense intuition that was often seen by people that knew him as sort of almost a psychic ability, you know. But I think he just had good intuition of what trends were and the way things were going and the way people were. I think he was a good reader of people.
Wow. Tell us a little bit about one of my favorites, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. What religious concepts are embodied in that particular movie?
Well, I think that, like jealousy, like the wicked queen, who, the movie opens, the first scene of this first animated film opens basically with the scene of black magic that she's trying to, she conjures up the mirror and then, says, I want to know if I'm still the most beautiful. And
diabolical.
Right, and then Snow White is the most beautiful. And of course, Snow White is kind of portrayed as this pure, almost a puritanical kind of
even
concept.
say virginal in a way.
Yeah, she's,
That's the word that was on my mind.
Yeah.
We're allowed to say it on CCTV.
Yeah.
Not a problem.
And,
People have heard
cleaning
that
the
one before.
house, she is, we have to clean the house now. And of course, there's a scene where she's seen praying, and which I think is interesting that Walt always wanted to make that prayer longer, but it is in the finished film.
Interesting. Let's turn to Lady and the Tramp. How do we see religion embodied in that one or played out?
Well, not as much, but in the story, but there is
the morality theme in
Well,
Lady and the
in the
Tramp?
very beginning, it's interesting that they do have a Christmas song at the very beginning of Lady and the Tramp to sort of just set the mood that this is Christmas. And if you look at the words, it's almost the opening song is called Peace on Earth, and then if you listen to it, it was almost like inspired by. Now it's flown out of my head now. Not Joy to the World, but Silent Night.
Oh, yes.
And even there's a very old Disney record of the soundtrack of Lady and the Tramp that I have, and they superimposed the words of Silent Night in the background of the lyrics of Peace on Earth, which is a purely Disney song. And you can see how Silent Night inspired Peace on Earth. So that's a little religious thing that they kind of had in there.
Okay, fast forward, one of the big movies and now plays, that's making lots of movies, Lion King.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about Lion King and the impressions you have
Oh,
of
that was
one?
very popular.
Yes.
It made a
lot of
lot of
people.
money.
Yes.
I think it was popular and was as good of a story as it was because it was based on Shakespeare, I think. And I think I knew some of the animators who worked on The Lion King. But by the time that one came around, I was kind of out of the animation scene. And unfortunately.
Could I ask a question?
Sure, Kanta.
Candy, I just want to ask you, like Disney, as you portray him to be very religiously inclined in most of his movies and his life, but do you think later on he become kind of disenchanted with what he believed in, or did he stay, very?
I think he, I think he did, kind of was disenchanted with organized religion from the beginning, actually, because of his father mostly.
What faith was he raised in?
Congregationalist,
Congregational, okay.
which is the Puritan heritage. The churches of the Puritans, in other words.
Oh.
And they were called congregational because they were ruled by their congregations. They didn't believe in bishops or answering to any other, person like that. But yeah, Walt was, I think you see in the later films, the later TV shows, much more expanding, beliefs. Like one thing I think is interesting that Disney actually believed in the possibility of life on other planets, which some people think of as a religious idea or a spiritual idea, I guess.
Okay. Candy, I have this little icon. The camera can show it. These are the fish things here. Tell us about the Little Mermaid and what you got out of the Little Mermaid in terms of values, religious and otherwise. And did it go with the flow, or was it against the stream?
Oh no, I think I really like the Little Mermaid, and Disney took a lot of the kind of the sadness and redemption and seriousness out of the original, and they made their version kind of this calypso, under the sea.
Yes, man.
Yeah, with the crab Sebastian, So I wouldn't say it's so much religious, that one. I mean, it's
a fun movie.
Yeah, if you want to look at the mythology of it, the mermaids were based on, like the pagan gods. Atar goddess, Venus was supposedly from the sea foam.
Yes, we are running toward the end of the show. And so I want to ask each of you, I just asked Candy, some closing comments for our last 30 seconds or so. What can people learn about Disney that would be helpful?
Well, that I don't think you can just put him like in a box and say he was a fundamentalist or he was a Christian fundamentalist, or on the other side, if he was an agnostic or an atheist. I think he was sort of a cultural Christian who had been sort of turned off by organized religion, but he still believed in God.
Good, cultural Christian.
Yeah.
So thank you everybody for tuning in. Another one of our series, Awesome Authors. We'll see you again in 2 weeks. Tune in and share this with your kiddies and your grandchildren. You could also get it on YouTube. Just focus on Awesome Authors on YouTube and you'll get this to your heart's content. Thank you. Bye now.